What is going on, YouTube? It is your boy, Faithful to God. And we are up again early in the morning to discuss our good friend, the doctor, Dr. Kelly Richardson, aka We Woke Now. So, the name of this show is Early Morning Discussion, the Good Doc's Literary Malpractice. I am joined by my good friends, Abu and 93. Abu and 93, say hello to the audience.
Good morning and happy Lord's Day to everyone, whether watching live or catching the replay later.
Greetings.
Yes. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So, Abu, if you could, let everybody know the reason for this live stream and the full controversy that initiated this. This stream.
So two things. We'll be discussing Kelly Richardson's video that he did on December 28th, titled Crafty Counsel, Blatant Liars. And for the record, 93 has already done a very good video on the subject. You can catch it. It's in the video description for anyone who wants to see that video. So we'll be discussing that. Now, that video came off as primarily a attempt to expose Garfield Reed, right, of the Brother Garfield podcast. But while we'll look into his argument against Garfield, I want to talk a little bit about the background to that show that Kelly did, right? You see, what the background to that show is that unrelated to Garfield. It was totally unrelated to Garfield. It had to do with Orthodox Moor, and we're going to show this. What the Orthodox Moor had been putting forth videos which were responding to, and honestly, in my opinion, dismantling the methodologies of Kelly Richardson, Will Brown, and Benayah, specifically when they attempted to argue against Arabic on the pews at First African Baptist Church, right? They were presenting arguments which were supposed to demonstrate the exclusion. They were supposed to exclude Arabic from the pews, show that Arabic is impossible on the pews. And so Orthodox Moor was looking into their methodology, right? And showing the problems with their methodology and showing the inconsistencies, right? Now, Kelly was upset by that. The good doctor was upset by Moor's more methodological points, right? And so they wound up having an exchange in a community post on Moor's page. By the way, can we show the relevant image, the community post show what Moore wrote?
Yes, precisely.
And so I'll set this up while you're getting that. Dr. Kelly Richardson was upset that Moore was getting into the methodology and stuff like that, and so they had a bit of an exchange, and Moore made a prediction. Orthodox Moor made a prediction, which I thought was interesting and honestly proved prescient, and we'll read it once it's up on the screen. I actually myself...
I'm pulling up right now.
Okay,
no problem. Right now.
So, and we'll show it in a second. So, but again, the Kelly Richardson was upset with Orthodox Moor because he was getting into the pews and he was arguing against their arguments against Arabic, right? Because Orthodox Moor was saying that they have not successfully excluded Arabic. Okay, so the text...
One moment. Let me just full screen.
Once you go full screen.
All right.
So the text on the left is Orthodox Moor's... this is a reply within a community post, and there's a link to the community post in the video description as well. This was a reply to Kelly Richardson because Kelly Richardson was beginning to become upset. At this point, he was upset because Orthodox Moor had showed that years ago, the tour guides, at least some of the tour guides at First African Baptist Church, were explicitly saying that Arabic is on the pews. They were also saying that Hebrew is on the pews, but they were also saying Arabic. And, Kelly felt that this shows he's part of some sort of an agenda or whatever. So the highlighted portion at the bottom is it's bigger on the right.
If I could read that.
Sure. Just that part on the right.
The sad part is everyone knows what to expect. You won't answer a single question and you will attempt a very poorly executed, quote unquote, crafty counsel playbook, trying to paint me as some sort of treacherous Muslim in league with the Catholics. And this is Orthodox Moor to Kelly Richardson, the 22nd of December, 2021.
Yes, exactly. So this was almost a week before Kelly Richardson's video where he jabbed at Garfield. And this is the real background to it. So what we're going to show is in that first off, note that in that exchange, Orthodox Moor had predicted that Kelly's reply would be this poorly executed, quote unquote, crafty counsel video, which ignores all the methodological questions and instead tries to depict him as, a sinister Muslim in league with Catholics. Now, less than a week later, Kelly does exactly what Moore predicted, right? And we're going to show some clips from the video. While it was a video against Garfield, there's a point to be made about what that video was, the design of the video. The video was meant to draw attention away from Moore's arguments on methodology, right? And to depict Moore as being in some sort of an alliance, not only with Catholics, but with quote unquote atheists. And he had in mind Garfield, right? So Kelly Richardson is depicting Orthodox Moors in some sort of sinister anti-Israelite alliance with Garfield simply because he criticized their arguments against Arabic on the pews, right? It's just really ugly. So if we could show the first clip, this is from this video, which was against Garfield, and note, it's going to run for about 6 minutes. Note how many times it jabs vaguely at Moors and why he was doing it.
If 93, if you can pull up the video clip, please. Yeah, if you could.
Yeah, well,
okay, let me adjust my audio and I'll pull it up.
Yeah. No, while we wait for him to do that,
I'll discuss it while you're pulling it up.
Yeah.
So again, as the audience listens to this, and again, this was a video against Garfield, but this is in the lead up to it, both at the beginning and at the end. Moore makes all these, not Moore, forgive me. Kelly Richardson makes all these sort of jabs. He takes all these sorts of jabs at Moors in general. He's doing the same thing that he did with Issachar and that he did with me, where rather than discuss methodology, he wants to depict people as not disagreeing with him, but attacking the entire Israelite community and being in some sort of sinister, crafty counsel. And this was all designed to avoid the arguments of Orthodox Moor, and also to lump him in with Garfield in the hopes that his attempted expose of Garfield would somehow, refute Moore by proxy. It's silly, but
if I could just momentarily, I want to put out a disclaimer. In fact, I'll let my friend Abu put out the disclaimer there in terms of these discussions that we're having are academic in nature. So let's be on record. While we all have our convictions and we all have our beliefs religiously, ideologically, it's nevertheless the case when it comes to methodology. While we can all be on different spectrums or ends of the spectrum, I should say, it's nevertheless the case that when it comes to methodology, while we can disagree on religious ideology or whatever the case is, methodology is methodology. Theoretically, Abu and Orthodox Moor can, in essence, agree on a particular. Well, I'll let you tell it, Abu, if you could. You both can agree on methodology.
The only thing I would say is that unfortunately, there are people on both sides, if we can refer somewhat simplistically to two different sides, but both amongst the Israelites and amongst people who express skepticism of certain Israelite positions, apologists and others, unfortunately, on both sides, there are people who do this thing where they don't acknowledge the right of others to work with whomever they please, to work with people of different ideologies. So I would say that, and I've been on record for years with this, I think we should, and we recognize everyone's right to work with whomever they please if it's on a point of common interest or common agreement, right? You don't have to be in ideological lockstep with someone to discuss an academic subject, right? So, like, for example, with Orthodox Moor, we should recognize his right. Now, this idea that he's in an alliance with Garfield is absurd, but hypothetically speaking, if he wanted to work with Garfield on a point of common agreement, that's his right. And if the very next day he wants to work with our friend Dante Fortson on a point of common agreement, again, that's his right. And we reserve the same right. We recognize everybody's right to work with whomever they please. The analogy I always give, aside from academia, right? And, in academia, you can have professors and fellow students who don't share your faith, but you can work with them on academic subjects. Aside from that, the analogy I often give is the pro-life movement. I've sometimes been involved in the pro-life movement. And while the pro-life movement is dominated by Christians, I've been at, pro-life rallies where Muslims would show up, Hindus would show up, and I even have known pro-life atheists. And I would never tell someone that, like, oh, you're not a Christian, so therefore you can't object to abortion, or I can't agree with you on the pro-life movement because you're not a Christian. No, we can actually agree on those points, And so it's the same thing here, you know, on an academic subject, a subject pertaining to language, or for the bulk of this video, interpreting a book, interpreting a 18th century source, or you know, a 17th century source. We don't need to be an ideological lockstep for that. And so that's the
Right.
salient point.
Exactly. And I would also point this out as well, that even people on their side of the fence will join with those who don't agree in lockstep in every single minute detail with them for a particular topic that they both have agreement or overlap in. So if we could, 93, could we play the relevant clip, please? If you have it up. You would have to share your screen, and this way we can present it to the audience. Okay. All right.
So while we're getting this clip up, listen for all the jabs at Moors, you know, that he's taking. And this is part of this expose of Garfield. So listen to all these little jabs at Moors that he takes, because this is all designed to lump Moore with Garfield, lump them together, and therefore draw attention away from Moore's arguments on the pews, and therefore present this idea to imply, to insinuate that a refutation of Garfield reflects on Orthodox Moor as well, because they're allegedly in this crafty council. But go ahead.
Tonight, I want to take a little time out tonight and talk about, just for a brief moment, the crafty council. I know you see on your screen the crafty council, blatant liars. The crafty council, blatant liars. And some of you guys probably remember when I did the whole series about the crafty council, dealing with a group of people, a group of individuals that was very nasty, very rude, very disrespectful. I mean, just straight grimy. You know, really took a discussion. Actually, it wasn't even a discussion. They took the pews, took Savannah, my heritage, and just really defecated all over it. Began to come up with all kinds of foolish things that inserted into the conversation because they had no answers. Had no answers. This group, this crafty council, consists of, you know, Christians, consists of Muslims, or someone that referred to themselves as a Moor, atheists. Decided to really go into a place that was a really dark place, right? Decided to take something that should have been a great opportunity for everyone to learn from, and just went grimy with it. Oh, and I don't want to forget the Roman Catholic, the crafty council. I'm not mentioning any names for a reason. This crafty council, I mean, these group of people are so wicked that, and desperate, that would do anything to try to muddy the water, to, you know, if they can't beat you in terms of, honestly, as far as what their information, then they have to take it nasty. Actually, they always take it nasty. Yes, I was going to take legal action. And actually, I consulted with my lawyer about the slandering things that was going on. And the only reason why I stopped is because my lawyer told me that these guys have no influence. He did stats and, you know, did his statistics, did his research. An entertainment lawyer, you know, I'm not going to mention his name because of these guys. My lawyer told me that these guys have no influence. I spent $14,000 cash. And he said, I can take your money. He said, I don't have a problem with taking your money. He said, but why would you invest money into a group of people that have no influence? But these so-called Christians and so-called Moors and so-called atheists, the so-called many of them from my community, Catholic, Roman Catholic, began to mock. So my lawyer said, look, ignore them. Said they have no influence. So I want to show you just how desperate this guy is, right? Israel, there's something special about you. When you see the Christian community, the Catholic community, Moors, atheists, and the conscious community come together to attack us, they don't go after the Ashkenazi Jewish community. You don't see them hounding them, but it's us. And like that old saying, all skin folks are not kin folks. And you can tell by the spirit that they operate in. Look, I'm not getting down with the Moors. I'm not getting down with Christianity. Even though I know more the proper context of it. I know that we deal with the skin complexion and all that. Excuse me. But in the context that is being used, the more science, the Moors and all that other stuff, no, I'm not getting down with that. Because guess what? If we look at it, truth be told, they sold our people out. The Moors. The Moors. They were some of the biggest sellouts of our community. That's a fact. So don't trust them. They still want to operate in that spirit, right? Remember, right? The Moors come from Moab. They're the descendants of the Moabites. The Moors are descendants of the Moabites. And guess what? The Moabites and the Ammonites, right? They are descendants of Lot and his daughters. Right? They are part of the crafty council of the 83rd book of Psalms, the Moors, right? The Moabites and the Ammonites is part of that crafty council. So don't be surprised if you see these groups coming together, Christianity, Catholicism, Judaism, Islam, right? The Moors still doing the same thing. Why? Because guess what? That's part of what? Their nature.
All right, excellent. Yeah, before that second clip plays, so that's
Family,
just
we
to set
living
the
in
tone.
Yeah, you got
Well,
to. Yo, 93, you got to pause.
But tonight, right? I'm going to deal with the crafty council.
Oops. I
I'm
clicked
going
the
to
wrong.
start.
Oops. There we go.
All right, thank you.
My apologies.
So what? So that was just to set up what the actual background was to this bizarre
Right.
video attacking Garfield, and now we're going to get into the attempt to expose Garfield. But the whole point was the insinuated point was, first off, the background was that Moore had criticized Kelly on the pews. They had a disagreement about whether Arabic can appear on the pews, and so Kelly was actually doing this very cheap tactic where he depicts Orthodox Moor, the same thing he did with me, depicts him as somehow attacking the Israelite community in general. Because if you disagree with Kelly and Brown and Benayah, you're attacking the entire community. This is the game they play. And then what he did is he tried to do this guilt by association thing. He insinuated that somehow Moore is in an alliance with Garfield, and that's what then leads into his attempt to refute Garfield, right? So we're going to play another clip. And as you listen to this, what I would ask the audience to listen out for is how Kelly hints multiple times that this not only shows that one member of the crafty council, the quote-unquote crafty council, is a liar, right? Because he's attempting to show that Garfield is quote-unquote a liar, right? But he's going to say multiple times that this is all of them. They're all liars. So he's already established that Moore is part of this. He's already accused Moore of being part of this crafty council with Garfield. And now his attempt to show that Garfield is a liar is somehow, he insinuates, it shows that they're all liars, that this is the playbook that they all use, right? In short, that this desperate segue that Kelly makes, where I'm sorry, forgive me, but he flails his arms at Garfield. It's supposed to tacitly expose Moore, right? It's supposed to expose Moore by proxy. That quote unquote
And if I
exposing
could just
Garfield
momentarily,
somehow exposes Moore because they're in an alliance. That's the cheap background to this. And now we can get into what he's had to say about Garfield. I'm sorry,
real
go
quick,
ahead.
if I could momentarily, I did want to say it's also interesting because the conversation, I just want to reiterate this. You said it, but I really want the audience to catch this. The conversation began about pew methodology. Now, if the conversation was on pew methodology, how could anything that Garfield said be relevant to what Moore said, given that neither of the conversation didn't hinge on what Richardson is attempting to prod at. He's about to poke at something that was irrelevant to Moore himself, right? It makes no sense. It's almost as if he was looking to toss out a red herring to get away from the fact that his pew methodology was being questioned by somebody who I think would agree with him in other areas, but clearly doesn't agree with him specifically on his approach to the Georgia pews in Savannah in First African Baptist Church. It's interesting. So if we could, 93, can you pull up the clip? It's the second clip in the video.
When does it start?
It's right after the clip that we just played.
Yeah, because I had let it bleed over. I apologize. I'm gonna go back.
It's okay. You could start from where you got, because you only went about 10 seconds over. You only went like 5 seconds over.
I'm gonna start while I'm
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So while we do that, again, I want to reiterate this for the audience that Kelly Richardson attempted to create a faux controversy over something Garfield said that was completely unrelated to what Moore brought out, in his criticisms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, basically, and that's why I want the audience, because now Orthodox, the part about Orthodox Moor is going to sort of fade into the background because it's Kelly transitions into attacking Garfield. But the whole point was, and this was sort of insinuated, because Kelly he's not very explicit, but he likes to manipulate his audience. The insinuation is that Orthodox Moor is somehow in an alliance with Garfield, and now he's going to attempt to expose Garfield as a liar, and this is going to show how they're all liars. So listen out for the way he says that, this is the playbook that they all go by. They're all liars. They all do this. The implication is that exposing Garfield exposes Orthodox Moor by proxy. It's a cheap attempt.
Yeah. 93, if you can go a little bit further back, you'll see the little cut screen, and then you can start from there. You'll see the little cut screen that it's a little further back. Little further back. Yeah, there. No, you just had it. You just had it. No, you're going way too far back.
That's fine. Right there.
Right there. Yep. You can start there. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Family, we living in a very bad time right now, but tonight, right, I'm going to deal with the crafty counsel. And I'm going to start with one of the blatant liars. All of them are liars. All of them are liars. And I'm going to prove it to you. And I'm going to show you what they do, the pattern that they do, the method that they do. Blatantly lie. But I'm going to show you something here, because I'm going to call one of them out. I have no problem with doing that. I'm going to call one of them out, and I'm going to show you the pattern of what these guys do. I'm going to show you just a little clip of just what these guys do. Now, the clip I'm going to share with you is from a debate between a guy by the name of Gorilla Hebrew and a guy by the name of Garfield Reed from the conscious community. Right? I want to show you just how deceptive Garfield Reed is. And I'm going to show you this is the playbook that all of them use. So I'm going to play a clip of him. I'm going to play a clip, and then I'm going to walk you through his pattern as well as the rest of them. But let me show you exactly what I mean by that. I'm going to walk you through the lie. First, let's play the clip again, and then we're going to get started.
What you need to understand of these dark-skinned Jews is that their father, because if you want to talk about that they are Jews in Africa, the fathers were normally white men. The Lankada descendants, the Luso Africans, became as dark as native Africans, reckon themselves still as if they were white Portuguese. They hate to be called black and want the status of their white progenitors. And by the way, none of these people came over on slave ships. You can't tie them to a slave ship. You can't show me a slave ship any of those black Jews, so-called black Jews, came over on. They were fostering the slave trade. They worked out the deals with the African kings.
See, I see your ace of diamond, Garfield, right? I'm going to deal with the source that you see Garfield made mention to. Travels, Francis Moore travels into the inland part of Africa. Now, I want y'all to pay attention to this. This is what Garfield read from. Now, I want you to look at so-called screen print. See, his ace of diamonds is he'll put sources on the screen, highlight them so that way you can't read them, but then he'll put whatever he wanted to say on the side. He read this as if this right here is actually a copy and paste from here to here. This is Old English here. I can pick it apart just by what you see on your screen. I'm going to pick all of this apart, and I'm going to show you this is the playbook of the entire group, the entire craft accounts, crafty group, been coming against our community. The entire group. This is how these guys operate. So I want you to pay attention here. I'm going to show you what this actually says versus what he wrote here and try to give the impression that this is what this right here is a reflection. This right here is the exact word for word here. You can just look at it and tell it's off. Right? So let's pull up the source. This is what Garfield actually superimposed. The playbook superimposed. Right? To guide the eyes, so to speak, the ace of diamonds, the Lancado descendants, Luso Africans become a dark and native Africans reckon themselves still as if they were white Portuguese. They hate to be called black and want the status of their white progenitors. So Garfield, right here, and he read it word for word, saying that this over here, this particular section of the book is about Lancado descendants. And he's saying that they want to stay white. They hate to be called black. And they want their status to be that of their white progenitor. So we're going to pick this apart. I'm going to show you. I'm going to really show you the playbook. These are what we're going to pick these apart. We are going to pick these apart. Lancado descendant, so Africans. They hate to be called black, want the status of their white progenitors. So they hate to be called black. So is this an accurate word for word quote from the source? Let's actually go to the source. Francis Moore travels into inland parts of Africa, 1723, page 29. Just so happened I already had the source. This is the actual screen print from the source, right? And this is the paragraph that you saw on Garfield's screen that he had inside his presentation. So all I did was took a clip from there, ripped it from here. It's the same. Now we're going to read it because it's Old English. I'm going to point out the actual people, the actual tribes that we're dealing with in this text, that he highlighted, that he lied blatantly. Right? The Mandingos, is what we're dealing with right here. Mundingos is the primary group that we're dealing with, but there's other groups within here. But I'm going to show you. Don't want to get ahead. So Francis Moore travels into the inward part. Africa is primarily referring to the Mundingos. You guys know who the Mundingos are, right? But I'm not going to get into all of that. Did the actual source say the Mundingos called black? Called black. They didn't like the term black and wanted their status to be that of their supposed progenitors. First, let's deal with the word progenitor to see what it means. Because Garfield called these guys progenitors. In other words, ancestor, the founder of a family. So he's saying that these white Portuguese is the founders of the Mundingos. But actually, he named a completely different group that's not even in the paragraph to say that they don't want to be called black. That's what Garfield said, right? He says that they don't want to be called black, that they want to be white. They want to be like their white progenitors, their white daddies. So did the actual source say that the Mundingos called black and wanted their status to be that of their supposed progenitors? Absolutely not. That is a lie. These guys are nothing but liars. So let me show you here. You see Mundingos, right? But notice what it says here. It says black as they are, but as they still, because this is Old English, so instead of the F, it'll be an S. But as they still retain a sort of a bastard Portuguese language called Creole, and as they Christian and married by the help of a priest sent yearly over hither from Esfago, one of the Cape de Verde Islands, they reckon themselves still as well as if they were actually white. And nothing angers them more than to call them Negroes, that being a term they use only for slaves and not, and they're not. So,
Okay, you can pause it right there. Yep, pause it right there.
Excellent. I know that was a long clip. Hope I asked the audience forgiveness.
Esfago, Santiago.
Yeah, that's a minor one, but yeah. But anyway, anything you want to say, either of you?
Man, that was really painful to listen to, man. I have to admit, that was a very painful listen. And not for all the reasons that Kelly might think it might be painful for us. It was painful to listen to just how poorly he understood that source. And I think it's a shame. And the fact that he's created this faux controversy over something completely unrelated, right? Being criticized on pew methodology, but somehow he's segued the conversation into this other direction, right? But with that being said,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, continue. If we could though, momentarily, I'm going to show the relevant portion of Moore's book. And by the way, this is a completely different Moore, ironically enough.
Francis Moore.
Well, he has a problem with all the Moors, so you know.
Yeah, I guess it works. Yeah, that's right. He said, "Don't trust any of the Moors." But yes, so what's interesting, this is a point I want to say for those who saw it a couple nights ago. 93 had an interesting and very cordial discussion with Tazarah. And one thing that they established, and I really appreciate this, and shout out to Tazarah for, he was a gentleman in his discussion with 93, and shout out to 93 as well. And even though he's right here in the room with us, one thing I appreciated was that they established that, being wrong on a source or misunderstanding a source doesn't make you out to be some sort of quote unquote liar that can be disregarded on all topics forever and ever, right? I really appreciate that they both agreed on that. And that applies here, that while Kelly is wrong about his depiction of Garfield's handling of the source, even if he was right, even if Garfield did misunderstand this source, that wouldn't establish Garfield as a liar. And that applies to Kelly, because we saw, and we're going to show in a second, Kelly badly misunderstood this source. But we're not going to play the cheap game that he played, where you accuse him of lying because he misunderstood a source. I'm not accusing him of deliberate deception. It seems like he just literally didn't understand the source. And here we go. Here's the source. Oh, and by the way, if people can see it, the red mark is basically where Kelly began in the clip that we showed. Later on, funny enough, he ended up reading the entire page almost, and he still didn't understand it. But anyway, in the clip that we showed,
Right.
he started reading at that red mark. We're going to start reading at that green mark in the margin to get the fuller context.
Right.
And just to give them some background, Kelly thought that the relevant text, that Garfield was focusing on was referring. Kelly couldn't distinguish between Mandingos and on the one hand, and the descendants of Portuguese who settled amongst the Mandingos and cohabited with them. And he wound up being entirely confused because he couldn't make that distinction, or because he failed to make that distinction. But go ahead.
Right. If we could, 93, could you actually read the source for us? I'll put it very. Ooh, I don't know what just happened there. Hold on one second. Let me just.
Yeah, I also have it on my screen, so I can do it as well. This is one of those rare times where, because I have my laptop.
No, I got it right here
as well.
No, I actually just hold on a second. That was actually the. Let me actually try this one more time. All right, so 93. I'm going to go into full screen. I'm going to let you read this. I'm going to mute my mic. So 93, when you're ready, let me know.
I'm gonna read it. Abu, is it possible that I can send you a source in the messenger, or I can put it in our private chat? Or
Sure. And yeah, I mean,
the reason I ask is because I have the Equiano slab before this show is over. I want to make sure that we go over that.
Yeah, send it in Messenger, because I can't put it on the screen, but maybe Faithful can or something like that. Or you could put it on the screen, but whatever the case, yeah. Unless you need me to read it. I can certainly read this source.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna read that, or we can take turns.
All right, go ahead.
Let me change my get back over there. All right. Okay. It's cut off from where it's cut off from the top. You showing this portion? Y'all don't have a problem with reading it?
Wait, do you see my mouse where I'm highlighting with my mouse? You can start a little further from the green. You'll see where it says you'll see where I'm hovering over my mouse. I'm going to do it in a moment.
I'm saying this particular picture of the source, I have one that's even fuller than this, where you can start from the top to see. But I mean, I can start where you want. Right here.
Yeah, I'm gonna highlight. Here we go. You're gonna see my mouse where you see my mouse hovering. That's where you start. It's gonna be a little.
I got you. Look, I got you. I'm gonna read from the top of the page. But
from what I'm looking at, it's a little cut off on the screen. It's
I have
on the left.
I have a. There you go. There you go. No. Start from the. Yeah, there you go. All right. Right. So this is Francis Moore. This is his source. From about 17. Some people say 1723. Some editions say 1738. So before I read, he was talking about different kingdoms. Like he talked about 3 different kingdoms prior to the one he's about to talk about now. So I'm gonna read. These different kingdoms upon the banks of the Gambia are inhabited by several races of people: Mandingos, Jolofs, Folies, Floops, and Portuguese. The most numerous are called Mandingos, as is likewise the country where they inhabit. They, the Mandingos, are generally of a black color and well set. When this country was conquered by the Portuguese, which was about the year 1420, some of that nation, the Portuguese, some of that nation settled in it, who, the Portuguese, have cohabitated with the Mandingos, till they, still the Portuguese, are now very near as black as they are. The Portuguese became as black as the Mandingos. But as they, the descendants, still retain a sort of bastard Portuguese language called Creole, and as they, Christian and marry by the help of a priest sent yearly over hither from Santiago, one of the Cape Verde Islands, they, the descendants, reckon themselves still as well as if they, the descendants, were actually white, and nothing angers them, the descendants, more than to call them Negroes, that being a term they use only for slaves, and their not understanding the true meaning of the word is the reason of their being so very much affronted at it. So in brief summary, this was talking about the Portuguese who came around 1420 and settled and cohabitated amongst Mandingos. They became darker. They had a Creole language, and they reckoned themselves, or they regarded themselves as well as if they were still white, indicating that they're looking at themselves with the status of their non-Black Portuguese forerunners. And they don't want to be called Negro, even though they're dark currently, and they don't fully understand the meaning of the word. They're understanding that it's just a term that means slave. They don't want to be associated with the slave class, even if they are dark. They don't want to be called that word because they don't want to be associated with the slaves. So that was just a basic little, reading of the text.
Yes, indeed. All right, Abu.
Sure. I mean, I can continue on if there's anything else you want to say. I would just say that, well, one thing I would add is this, right after that, I don't know if it was the next day or the day after, but at the end of last month, both 93 and Garfield went on Berean's show. It was December 29th. That's what it was. It was the next day. So Kelly's show appeared on December 28th, and then 93 and Garfield went on Berean on December 29th. And it was a marathon show. It was long. It was like 5 hours. But it became painfully clear during that show that Kelly had misunderstood the source, as you saw here. Like as we said, he failed to distinguish between the Mandingos and the descendants of the Portuguese who settled amongst them and cohabited with them and mixed with them, right? And so what's interesting is that a number of people were promoting Kelly's video as exposing Garfield, but once it became clear that Kelly had misunderstood the source, Kelly's own supporters started to back away from Kelly's objection, and instead they sort of revised the objection to complaining more modestly that Garfield said the text referred to lanzados, not lancados, lanzados, and Luso-Africans, when the text does not explicitly mention such. And we can get into that. Oh, actually, this is great. If we could use this. This is a young man. We don't know who this young man is. In recent discussions on Berean a couple nights ago, we asked who it might be, but maybe it's not. So whatever the case, whoever this young man is, this is a Kelly supporter, a supporter of Kelly Richardson, and even he was acknowledging that this was a comment on Berean's video, acknowledging that Kelly had misunderstood what was going on. But this is an example of how, and multiple people did this, they scaled back Kelly's objection to just the fact that the book doesn't mention Luso-Africans or lanzados. And so I guess we can touch on this, unless there's something else either you or 93 want to say.
Yeah, I'll read this up if you want. It says, I want to start off by saying I am an Israelite, and I think Pastor Kelly was wrong and misinterpreted Garfield's info. But at the same time, and this is the highlighted portion, the book Garfield and 93 shared did not say anything about lanzados or Luso-Africans. They added that in. They act like all white Portuguese people were Jews. It's just said, or I guess they meant to say sad, or no, it's just said white Portuguese men mixed in with black Africans, and that's it. The lanzados were Jews, and not all Portuguese people were Jews. You just can't take any mention of the Portuguese and pretend it's talking about lanzados or Jews. Not all Portuguese were lanzados, and to use a book that was made after the primary source to support opinions is not good scholarship. If the Portuguese in the primary book were really Jews or lanzados, then it would have said so.
All right, let me jump in. So if anybody seen the Kelly clip, remember he was saying, I'm going to show how they superimposed. So the whole thing was when I highlighted that text, because Garfield borrowed that slide from me, I highlighted, and Faithful can attest, he's seen me highlight sources before. And then
yes,
we would do it live, and sometimes the highlights would obscure the text. And we would have our summary on the side, because when me and Faithful did videos, we did Faithful himself just did a 4-hour video last month. But we used to do like those videos in the summertime that, you know, obviously the opposition didn't watch. And we would have to summarize what was on the slide because we would have so much to say, and I didn't want to forget what I wanted to say, or I wanted to hit on what I wanted to say. So that form of slide that y'all see is something both me and Faithful curated together. So sometimes you'll see Faithful still use that style, and you know, sometimes you'll see me. So you really probably couldn't tell who did what. But the point is, in that slide, Kelly didn't see the text because it was a little obscured by the highlights, but he's seen the summary, so he assumed they're trying to impose their own words into the text and blot out what's in the text and pretend that their summary is really what they meant to write. No, that
if I just could momentarily, going back to the relevant comment that we were looking at, because I want the audience to catch it. The relevant comment was saying that the primary didn't say Luso-African, right? Or lanzado, pardon me, or you know, whatever the case is. Abu, if you could just touch on that momentarily, because we're going to show a definition, because
I have it in the slide too.
Yeah, we could discuss
because that was one of the objections to the those who are followers of Kelly Richardson, who were objecting once you know, things
and
were
we
shown.
can say it's the revised objection. Like after it became clear that Kelly himself didn't understand the source, the objection was revised and scaled back to this objection. And we should break it into two parts. That the text that Garfield said this text is referring to Luso-Africans and lanzados, but the text does not explicitly mention others. So we should break that into two parts, that it doesn't mention Luso-Africans and that it doesn't mention lanzados. We could deal maybe with the Luso-African part first.
I got you. I mean, I could share my, let me see if I can share my screen. Share screen.
So just while they're pulling up this slide, just to be clear, the term, that prefix Luso, that sort of adjectival prefix, it literally means Portuguese, right? When you say Luso-African, it's like saying Sino-American, right? Like Sino-American refers to Chinese Americans, right? And so Luso, it means Portuguese. So these are, I mean, they descend from Africa.
Well, if I could just momentarily before 93 shows that, if I could just show my screen just for a moment, 93. Sure. Just give me one moment. Let me just pull it up on my side. So this is the definition of Luso-African. All right, here we go. Luso, prefix, relating to Portugal or the Portuguese language. This is a study of Luso-American literature, that is, writings by Portuguese-speaking authors in North America. So there we go.
Right, that was the example. So this is from the Cambridge. If you go to the top of the little image there, this is from the Cambridge dictionary. It's the definition of Luso, because it relates to the Latin term for Portugal. Like in Latin, the area around Portugal was called Lusitania, right? You know, so you had Hispania and then you had Lusitania. So the area was called Lusitania, and that's why Luso, as in pertaining to Lusitania, is used for Portuguese. Right. You know, so they were so even though the source doesn't use the phrase Luso-Africans, it's definitely referring to Luso-Africans because it's referring to people who descend from both local Africans and Portuguese settlers.
Mm-hmm. And if any of y'all, you don't have to, but if you wanted to go to Wikipedia and look up Luso-Africans, the people that they source for that information is the people that I got my information from. So if you look up Luso-Africans or lanzados and y'all go to the references that they get the general information from, it's from Peter. One of the main contributors is Peter Mark and Jose da Silva Horta. And those names gonna come back up. So I'm gonna share my screen real quick and I'm gonna run through this stuff because I already did a video. I don't need to be too long.
And by the way, 93's video is in the video description of this video. I definitely recommend it. It was hosted here on Faithful's channel. It's a very good video. He goes into detail on Kelly's video. But I'm sorry, forgive the interruption. Go ahead. This was
his screenshot. You know, the lens. You know, he took my summary. He think this is a word for word quote, but we know of course not that it isn't. So what I was saying is, no, of course not. But the Lanzado descendants, Luso-Africans. So I was really saying Luso-Africans. I wasn't imposing any of these words, but I really was referring to Luso-Africans in particular. So Luso-Africans, according to my research, oftentimes are the descendants of Lançado. So the Lançado descendants, Luso-Africans, become as dark as Native Africans. So technically, just by a reading of, I'm sorry, like if he actually read my summary correctly, he'd see Luso-Africans as the subject matter, and that definition alone, even if they weren't Jews, it is talking about Portuguese Africans, Luso-Africans, just that simple. But how did I come to that conclusion? I did not come to the primary sources first. I read secondary sources. Peter Mark's book, Portuguese Style and Luso-African Identity. This book was actually in one of Divine Prospect's videos. Shout out to that brother. He actually recommended the work of Peter Mark. He's a Hebrew. And he taught, and Peter Mark and Jorge da Silva, these are images of both. They're actually very involved. They write about the Jewish communities in West Africa. That's them. It's Peter Mark, whatever.
I have the book on the right. If you could go back, the book on the right, if you could just go back momentarily. Really good book.
Both of them.
Yeah.
What is this? Are you familiar with this university, Abu? Is it Wesleyan or wait? This university?
Wesleyan, yeah. I can't see the screen, but yeah, Wesleyan, I assume.
Y'all can't see the screen?
No, I mean,
we can see your screen. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. No. Okay. Yeah. So
Wesleyan.
basically, this guy, he's a historian of West African history and art, and in his book, he identified the text as being referring to Luso-Africans. Now, in the source, it doesn't explicitly say Luso-Africans because all these terms aren't explicitly used in those sources. You got to know how to dig, right? But we'll see why. So certain things, like in his book, page 13 to 14, he says immigrants from Portugal, some of whom were Jews seeking to escape religious persecution, who were known as Lançados, settled on the coast. Many of them married women from local communities. And by the early 16th century, the offspring of these unions, Luso-Africans, or quote-unquote Portuguese, as they called themselves, were established at trading centers. So what he's saying, and this is the text that I'm getting all these primaries from, he's saying he's referring to them by the titles we know now, Luso-African, Lançados. But he's saying Portuguese is how they designate themselves in the text. And we're going to see examples. He keeps saying, he said, among the groups inhabiting this region were several thousand Luso-Africans, or quote-unquote Portuguese, as they were widely known. So anybody doing research, the people who are scholars and experts in this field will tell you, you're going to find them under the auspices of just calling themselves Portuguese. Think about it. They're exiled for being public Jews. They're new Christians. They're crypto Jews. They're from Portugal. It makes sense that they simply just call themselves Portuguese. I mean, they're not wrong. Again, he said a central aim of the book is to provide a detailed view of one of the specific groups in the region, Senegambia, Cacho, the Luso-Africans, or as they are referred to in contemporary documents, the Portuguese. When they say contemporary, they mean contemporary to that time. So I'm not going to read all of this stuff, but this particular footnote on page 43 of this book identifies Francis Moore's source as referring to Luso-Africans. It says 18th century European descriptions of Luso-Africans portray a progressively more negative judgment. The English factor in the Gambia, Francis Moore, whose extensive contact with Luso-Africans during his 1732 stay, seems not to have engendered much respect for them. And right here, I don't know if y'all can see well, this is footnote 85. This is how I found the primary. Footnote 85 is Francis Moore travels in the inland part of Africa. That was my methodology into finding his source, put it in the slide and saying the words Luso-Africans, because according to the expert who wrote this book, that's who it's talking about. And I want to segue, Abu, or one of y'all can segue into Jobson, because this book talks about Jobson source.
We're definitely going to get to Jobson as well. Yeah, that's coming up, because we're going to compare Jobson to Francis Moore.
So I'm going to stop my screen. And I just want to say regarding that, basically my methodology, because I gave Garfield that slide and Kelly tried to call him out for it. My methodology was from an expert who said that you identify them as Portuguese. They called themselves Portuguese in West Africa. And that term is a term that they use for themselves. So that was my methodology for putting that on the slide. And if I'm at fault, I can apologize. But that is the methodology of an expert in West African history who has published 5 books. So your criticism of me is one of a scholar.
You have nothing to apologize for, because there was nothing that you did that was wrong. But if we
that's
could,
that's
if we
perfect.
could
That
actually,
allows us to segue into that my brief exchange
Yeah.
with the young man using the screen name IDST, because
Right.
and if I may mention this, well yes, exactly. Also, aside from this gentleman here, also in Garfield's, excuse me, not Garfield, in Berean's show, which had Garfield in '93 on, there was a brief period where Sister E was on, and let me say up front, I don't mean this in any sort of malicious sense against Sister E. I'm a fan of Sister E, but in all fairness, on that show, she herself was taking the position that it was wrong for Garfield to say the text is referring to lanzados if it doesn't actually mention lanzados. And now this young man who we showed a previous comment from him, he took a similar approach. So I asked him for clarification. By the way, can you zoom in a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so if I could go ahead and read it. I was merely trying to clarify your objection, IDST. It seems your position is the following. Irrespective of what any secondary source says, if the primary source does not explicitly mention lanzados, one cannot claim it refers to lanzados. Is that an accurate assessment of your position? It seems to be. And the young man's response, or whoever this is, his response was, that is exactly what I'm saying. And that is common sense. Primary sources back up secondaries, not the other way around. You don't add to books.
Okay, and so this is helpful because 93 noted his methodology, his interpretation of Francis Moore was influenced by Peter Mark. So he's the secondary source, which was by a serious scholar, or two serious scholars, influenced his interpretation of the primary source. So the objection becomes, and I'm not limiting this only to that young man, we're just using that as an example. This was the at least tacit approach of everybody, not everybody else, but of a number of other people who, whether on the panel or in the live chat that night on Berean's show, when they scaled back Kelly's objection, it wound up being scaled back to Garfield says the source refers to lanzados, but it doesn't explicitly mention lanzados. It was like an attempt to salvage Kelly's polemic. So that's what it got reduced to. And, so something that 93 brought up in his recent show, which was hosted on Faithful's channel, is that this is a new rule. They're introducing a new rule. I don't know if you want to jump into the third clip.
Before you do that,
Sure.
there's one thing I do need to show y'all real quick, and it got to be real quick.
Okay, take your time. Go ahead.
And I got to share my screen to do it, because this is gonna kind of back up what I was my methodology, and it's kind of, I won't say it demolishes their position, but it's not. It's Let me know when my screen is showing. Faithful.
Showing now.
Okay, so this is the same book, page 43, Peter Mark's book. Now I'm about to show y'all another source. So Kelly, Garfield used the Equiano slide, he used Lemaire, he used Francis Moore, and he used one more, maybe 3 to 4 slides of mine. He singled out Francis Moore. And if y'all watch my video, I can't give you the timestamps because it's a long video, but I showed where he showed what Garfield was reading and skipped over one source. So this is the same book, the secondary source, Peter Mark, and I'm gonna show y'all that I got Peter Mark is on the money, because he found the source that he says refers to Luso-Africans, and this one is going to explicitly say Jews, right? So this is page 43. Significantly more pejorative was Jacques Lemaire's 1695 definition of Luso-Africans on the Petite Coast. Now, this is the word Luso-African ain't going to be here, but watch what word is here, right? So this is a quote. I'm not going to go over this. This is a quote, and this is footnote 83. In his same book, I found the primary. I found all the primaries here. You see Jobson here, 81. Here's Lemaire, 83. C.L. Lemaire. I go to Lemaire book. This is page 608 of his book, Voyage of C.L. Lemaire. Look at the top. I'm going to read real quick.
This is a primary for the record.
This is the primary, but look real quick. I want Abu and y'all to notice. Besides these three nations, besides these three nations, there is another who are a sort of Portuguese, a nation who name themselves so. So again, when we get down to who these people are, you're going to notice they're identified as what they're going to be called, but they call themselves Portuguese, right? So a nation who name themselves so because they were formerly subject to them and are descended from those who first inhabited the coast after the discovery of it. From the negresses, black women, whom they married, were born the mulattoes. They had mulatto children with black women, from whom the mulattoes are descended a more swarthy race. Now let me go down. As they have followed the religion of their old masters, they are partly Jews and partly Catholics. So we see that these are explicitly referenced as Jews. They're identified as Jews, but guess what they call themselves? They don't call themselves Luso-Africans or Lançados. They are a sort of Portuguese, a nation who name themselves so. And I got this out of Peter Mark's book, same book I got Francis Moore. So if he's right about Lemaire, and he doesn't and Lemaire don't explicitly say Luso-Africans or Lançados, he has them as Jews, but his source says that they call themselves Portuguese. So why would I have why wouldn't I have the idea that, okay, this scholar know what he's talking about? They're calling themselves Portuguese, and this source explicitly mentions them as Jews. That's my methodology. This is another source that was mentioned in Kelly's in Garfield's video that Kelly did not take notice of. And that's why I felt that he wasn't being deceptive, but he wasn't being deceptive or trying to lie, but he may have been selective, or he may have just not seen this. So what were y'all thoughts about that? Because I used that book to find multiple primary sources.
Really intriguing.
No, of course, I agree with your methodology. I see no objection to it. And that's the point I was trying to make, is that this idea that you can't view the primary source through the lens of the scholarly secondary source is, I mean, with all due respect to all parties involved, it was a new rule that was introduced on the fly, somewhat unfairly, frankly, to sort of salvage Kelly's objection and have at least something to jab at Garfield, have something with which, to jab at Garfield, to use as a stick with which to beat Garfield. And it was a new rule. And as you showed in your video, and I hope we can show a little bit here, this rule did not apply earlier because some of Kelly's supporters and, others who had been on different channels had taken essentially the same approach, interpreting a primary source that does not mention Lançados as referring to Lançados because a secondary source treats it that way. If I don't know if you want to jump into the third clip, I can set it up.
Yeah, if we can get into the third clip, 93.
Yes.
If you could pull it up.
So while he's doing that, I'll talk about it.
It was right after that long, if I could, it was right after that long Kelly Richardson clip that we played earlier.
It'll be about like 17 minutes into the video.
Yeah.
So while we're while that's coming along, I'll discuss it. Now, this is going to be a clip of our good friend Tazarah, and I want to say up front that, again, as I said earlier, I appreciate the very cordial conversation that Tazarah had with 93. So this is not intended as some sort of an exposure of Tazarah, but only to show, to sort of establish, yes, so we're going to show this clip, but hold on one second. This is going to be the clip. This is not to jab at Tazarah. It's not an attempt to expose Tazarah or anything like that. It's just to show what the rules, the tacit rules were before Kelly's objection to Garfield, right? That before Kelly attempted to launch this polemic at Garfield, which, as we said earlier, was part of some sort of bizarre reply to Orthodox Moor, before he went down that road, it was considered permissible to use a secondary source as the lens through which you interpret a primary source, and that it was permissible to take a source that does not explicitly mention Lançados and treat it as referring to Lançados, right? So this is going to be our friend Tazarah, the young gentleman who's recently had a discussion with 93 on Berean. This young man, Tazarah, he did this on Dante's channel, and in the clip we're going to show, it's from Berean, where he's interpreting Richard Jobson's source, The Golden Trade, I believe, through the prism of Leo Wiener's book. And so now we're only showing this to show that this was considered permissible before Kelly's polemic. He's going to treat the primary source, which does not explicitly mention Lançados, as referring to Lançados, because frankly it is. I think they're both Jobson and Francis Moore are. So I'm sorry, continue.
Oh, there's no audio. Oops, there was no audio, so we're gonna wait for 93 to fix the audio. I think you had to run it through the stereo mix one more time, 93, so this way everyone can hear loud and clear. All right. As soon as you have that ready, we will play the clip. And again, just to remind everybody out there, it's simply to show where initially, prior to this faux controversy by Kelly Richardson, the methodology seemed to be different, correct? Is that correct assessment? Yep. All right. So go ahead and put it back up, and then we'll go ahead and play the clip. Alrighty. There we go. All right. Go ahead and play the clip.
So we see Richard Jobson. He made a voyage to interact with these people in 1620, and the source I'm about to read is quoting what Jobson says about these people. He's about to explain what they look like, and he's going to explain where they came from. Now, the Lancados, as I just read, they were Jews. Some of them, it said many were Jews, and some were converts to Christianity. So let's read and see what he says. This is page 110 in this book, Africa and the Discovery of America by Leo Weiner. Jobson describes these Lancados under the name of Portugales. This means Portugal. Portugales simply means Portugal. They weren't called the Lancados back then. They were called this. Let's see what he says. I must break of a while from them and acquaint you first of another sort of people we find dwelling, or rather lurking, amongst these Mandingos. So he's saying the Lancados, they dwell and live amongst the Mandingos. Only one leads some certain way up the river. And these are, as they call themselves, Portugales. He just said right here, Jobson describes these Lancados under the name of Portugales. So he's talking about the Lancados when he says Portugales. And some few of them seem the same. Others of them are mulattoes between black and white. Notice he doesn't say any of them are white. He's saying some of them look between black and white in reference to their skin complexion, but the most part as black as the natural inhabitants.
All right, excellent. And again, I just want to reiterate that showing that was not intended as some sort of an exposure of Tazarah. I think what he was doing there was fair. You know, he is within his rights to interpret Jobson through the lens of Leo Weiner. But I just wanted to be clear that everyone understood this to be acceptable back then. Jobson, the primary source, does not explicitly mention Lancados, but I think we can interpret it as referring to Lancados. And
if I could just chime in, just momentarily.
Yeah, sure.
It seemed to be the case that Kelly Richardson was okay with that sort of methodology when it was somebody from his side utilizing it. In other words, there were no videos objecting to the methodology being employed. But
right. Well, yeah,
the methodology
didn't have any objection.
But when the methodology was employed by an opposing viewpoint, a dissenting viewpoint, now it seemed to be an issue, right?
And not only an issue for the person handling the source, but for everyone who's allegedly associated with them. You know, not that Orthodox Moor is actually associated with Garfield, but again, remember, this was supposed to be a sort of exposing Garfield so as to indirectly discredit Kelly Richardson, because not Kelly Richardson, Orthodox Moor, because Kelly sort of waved his hand and declared that they're in an alliance. So yeah, obviously this rule did not apply when Tazarah, and again, Tazarah's handling of the source was fair there. It's fair.
No, I was about to say Tazarah was correct in what he did. Weiner was
yes,
correct.
Exactly. So we're not criticizing Tazarah here. We're just showing that this rule did not apply back then. It's a new rule that was suddenly introduced, basically December 28th or December 29th. As so as to have anything to throw at Garfield.
And if you can watch that video, look in the chat while he's saying that. You know what you're gonna see? You're gonna see the main detractor, and shout out to the sister, the elder sister E. You're gonna see her champion. You're gonna see people putting fireball emojis, and she said, well, there's a screenshot where she said, well, they, as in people who probably would disagree, they're gonna say the Mandingo, there's a white version of Mandingos. So there was no objection. There was no objection to that using the secondary source that doesn't word for word quote the primary when you look at the primary. There wasn't none of that objections back then. So if that was brought to their attention, I wonder what would be said. What would they say?
Right. If we could we compare the sources though?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Let's compare Francis Moore and Richard Jobson.
Yeah, let's look at that real quick. Let me just pull that up. All right, about to share right now.
Yeah, and Jobson is the first source, 1620. And then in the same region, the same people mixing in that same area, 110 or 118 years later, is found by the Francis Moore source.
Yes, indeed. All right, here we go. Tell me if you all can see this. Actually, let me do it this way. All right, is that good? Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
I can see it on the screen. Yep.
So, all right. Just want to make sure that everyone can see that.
Yep.
And Abu, if you can go ahead and explain to the audience.
Sure. So what's on the left is the source that Garfield and 93 were handling, which again is Francis Moore's travels into the inland parts of Africa, the sources from the early 18th century. On the right is Richard Jobson, which is the source that our friend Tazarah was reading through the lens of a 20th century source, but Richard Jobson's The Golden Trade is from the early 17th century. And the reason why we're comparing them is because honestly, they're saying they're referring to almost exactly the same thing. And it's referring to the descendants of Portuguese who settled amongst the Mandingos in the Senegambia region. And so if the one on the right is referring to Lanzados, then the one on the left is referring to Lanzados, because they're essentially referring to the same population as far as I can see. But you gentlemen,
100 years apart, 100 years apart, same area, same thing happening. And guess what? Neither of these sources explicitly say Jews, Lanzados, anything. They give clues, but here's the thing. Richard Jobson's clue is better, but I'm going to tell you how Francis Moore is still good. When you go into Jobson's or the earlier source, right, and it's the same region, it doesn't mention any of that, but it gives you a clue. I don't know if it's here on your screen, but it calls the people Portugales, meaning Portuguese. That's what they call themselves. And as I just told you, when I showed you the source that explicitly called themselves Jews, C.L. Lemaire, which is equally as old as Jobson in the 1600s, they called themselves simply Portuguese, because Portugales mean Portuguese. And I don't know in this version that you have of Jobson, it said these men were banished, and we know the variety of Portuguese that were banished were mostly Jews or the Lanzados who created the Luso Africa.
As a point that you brought up that was great is that it wasn't strictly Jews, but it was mostly Jews, but it also included non-Jews who had a damaged social status, perhaps because they had a criminal past, or for whatever other reason that their social status was damaged, So those were also amongst the Lanzados.
Right. Now, what vindicates more is the fact that even if it doesn't explicitly say they referring to a banished people or give you a visual clue that these are Jewish people, like Jobson, because Jobson further down says they were banished, right? This is referring to pretty much the same population 100 years later. So really, Seymour refer to Seymour refer to Jobson, basically.
Exactly, and vice versa, because also Francis Moore also helps us to interpret when this population arrived, because Moore is explicit about this about when they arrived.
I'm not so sure on that date though. I'm not so sure.
Oh, okay. Well, nonetheless, that they arrived in the early 15th century, because it's helpful when interpreting Jobson, because some were wondering if the population that Jobson was referring to was the first population that arrived, or if they were the descendants.
That is. But remember, exactly.
Those first arrivals, and so they had been there for about 2 centuries by that point.
Yeah, some would try to say, well, the Jews came in 14. Well, the Jews, before they even got kicked out, who's to say they weren't explorers along with the Portuguese? I mean, they came to America, man. I mean, they weren't just sitting there waiting to get kicked out. They were active in the places that they were. So, and the last thing I'll say is both of these sources, I have Jobson too, but you know where I got Jobson from? The secondary source gave me all these sources, except Peter Mark. I got, if you go, like I said, if y'all go on Wikipedia for Lanzados or Luso Africans, you're gonna see his work cited to give y'all the Wikipedia page, to give y'all what they got from him to put on Wikipedia. So yeah, I got both of these sources from Peter Mark's source, and he identifies this one, and the other one, C.L. Lemaire, that I read to y'all, as referring to Luso Africans. So I'm a mute.
Right. And if I could, just to put this out there, for those who on the opposing side, please, there's a cedilla there, lanzados, not lancados. lanzados.
For all of us. For
If
all
we
of
could
us.
moving
Why don't
forward.
we, that should be all of
us.
our I know they don't like to do the New Year's resolutions, but let that be a resolution for all of us, that we refer to this, that we pronounce this like a S, the way it's supposed to be pronounced. And in 2022, let's all say lanzados, not lancados.
It's not too late
sides.
to make resolutions.
That's not too late. Not especially on
Oh.
that one. Yeah, there's room for improvement for everyone on that one.
Okay, because I wanted to cut back on romantic comedies and yogurt. So
all right.
Yes, indeed.
I guess I don't know, unless you gentlemen have anything else to say. I think maybe we should just,
so
Go
you
ahead.
want to go right to the summary?
I guess so, yeah. Maybe we should
pull up the
summarize.
summary. All right, here we go. I'm gonna pull up the summary right now. Here we go. Give me a moment. Okay. One moment. Here we go.
Yeah, basically, I mean, we could sum this up in 3 points, I think.
no, it's one last thing to show too. It's one last thing.
Oh,
to show.
okay. Maybe
Equiano.
There was?
Equiano.
Oh,
you want to deal with
actually,
Equiano?
93 get into Equiano. This is important because apparently Kelly intends to do another show tonight, jabbing at Garfield yet again. This time he's going to try to jab at him on Equiano. Now, I don't know what kind of approach he's going to take, but I think 93 has something to say about that.
I sent you the picture, so I mean, if you could share or you can somehow. I don't know.
I'm unable to. I don't know if you could send it to.
Send
okay,
it to
Faithful.
Yeah, give me one moment. So while I pull this up, if you can go ahead and give a little brief intro to what's so if you could, before we go right into the image 93, so if you could tell everybody why this is relevant, tell them the whole thing with Kelly and with the live stream and
Kelly,
what he's proposing
I think he
to
was
do.
in trapped in the closet. No. Oh no. Okay, so I don't know what he's gonna do in his live stream.
Trapped in the closet. All right, let's stop.
Trapped in a scholarship. I don't know about what he's gonna do in his new video, but I mean, only reason I wanted to show because in his video he said he was gonna get to it, but then he was like, "Nah, I don't want to." So I was like, "Oh," I gave him the side eye, put some emojis in there. So I was like, what are you gonna say?" Because you should show that because there's summary on the side, and I want to see, are you gonna you're gonna try that approach again with the Equiano slab? Because once we see it, we're gonna clearly see that that's not supposed to be a word for word, because my highlights are more clear in there. So there's no word for word anything that you're gonna see. It's gonna be obvious that I'm just saying what I see there, right? So that is diffused there. But other than that, I wonder, is he gonna deal with Equiano's opinions at the time on the Igbo and the Jewish people? Other than that, only thing I think he can argue with Garfield on, because Garfield has disputed and he's brought out scholarship on the back and forth on Equiano's origin. Was he an African? Meaning, did he really even know the Igbo to compare them to Jews, or was he an African American and he was just speculating? Was he just speculating?
Right. All right, here we go.
On Facebook. There you go. So is that a little clearer than the faded out one that Kelly showed in this video?
Definitely.
Yeah. And okay, so when y'all look at this, because he was saying in the other one, I ain't gonna do no voice. They blotted it out so that you couldn't see, and then they wrote what they wanted it to say. Well, right here you could clearly see this as a summary. This thing don't even start with Olada. If you look at my video, when Garfield reads, he reads from the source first, then he goes to the summary. So I'm just saying, if you read this, you're gonna see that Olada is talking about the Igbo compared to the Jews, right? He said, as to the difference of color between the Igbo Africans and the modern Jews, so he comparing them to modern Jews, I should not presume to account for it. Like, I don't know. It's a subject which is engaged the pens of men of both genius and learning. It's far above my strength, so he can't give you his own opinion on why. The most able Reverend Mr. T. Clarkson, however, in his much admired essay on the slavery and commerce of the human species, has ascertained the cause. So he's saying this guy's got it in a manner that at once solves every objection on that account, and on my mind at least has produced the fullest conviction. So correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like he's convinced that Reverend Clark got the answer to this based on his words. He said, I shall therefore refer to that performance for the theory, contenting myself with extracting a fact as related to Dr. Mitchell, quote, the Spaniards who have inhabited America under the torrid zone for any time are become as dark colored as our native Indians of Virginia. of which I myself have been a witness, unquote. There is also another instance of a Portuguese settlement at Matamba, a river in Sierra Leone, where the inhabitants are bred from a mixture of the first Portuguese discoverers with the natives, and are now become in their complexion and in the woolly quality of their hair, perfect Negroes, retaining, however, a smattering of the Portuguese language. Now, doesn't this kind of a little bit sound like what we was just reading? I'm not trying to bring no attention to that other than the comparison, because I don't know if these were Jews. They could be regular Portuguese. But the same, this phenomena of mixing, of foreign people mixing with Africans, just keep happening. So right here, we just put basically a summary of what we read. Oladah puts his confidence in Rev Clarkson's explanation of the difference in color between the Igbo and Jews. Climate change white Spaniards dark. The same may have happened to produce the Igbo. Because this is his idea of the difference in color. Notice the mention of Portuguese mixing and becoming Negroes in Sierra Leone, confirming the history of Luso-Africans. And maybe that's another thing that he might be saying. He might be saying maybe climate. I'm not a climate guy, but mixing maybe, because he mentions the mixing here. So Equiano, a native of London, noted the color difference between blacks and Jews. And during that time period that Oladah wrote, I think Oladah was around when the Jews were about to, or they were already readmitted back into London, because they were readmitted back in the 1750s. So he would have seen these Jews, and these Jews that came back in would have been, a different color. And he's comparing the Igbo, who are rumored to be Jews, with modern Jews of that time. I'm a mute. So any thoughts y'all share on this?
Man. Oh, man. All I'm going to say is that I cannot wait until our good friend, the doctor, puts out his video. It'd be interesting to see what other things he, provides his interesting commentary on.
Well, I'll say this. It's hard to anticipate what he's going to do. I mean, a lot of his reasoning is often surprising and not always predictable. I mean, at least his polemic against Moore was predictable, because Moore was able to correctly anticipate it and predict what he would do. But sometimes his reasoning, like, his interpretation of Francis Moore, is not unexpected. So maybe he'll have an unexpected.
Well, can we use your word curious? Curious.
It was a curious interpretation. Certainly wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
I ain't saying nothing unless he try that. Well, I might not even. I just let Garfield speak for that, because the only thing I'm interested in is he gonna try the same thing. They imposed this on the slide. If he try that, then I might say something.
This
but other than that,
the slides.
I don't.
No,
I don't want to say nothing unless he says either that, or if he says my name and try to continue down the road. But just before you read the summary, just in closing, my opinion, I don't believe Kelly Richardson is a deceptive person or a liar. I don't think he's trying to be. I think maybe
not
he's
based
just
on this.
Wrong. Yeah, not based on what I've seen. I don't know the man. I can't speak for everything. I would say he's wrong and incorrect, and he had a bad breakdown of that source. And I don't want to make people who are wrong, because people are going to make mistakes. You got to be wrong about most things to be right about the little bit that you do know. Nobody knows everything. So I would say the brother, I'm not going to accuse him of being a liar.
Some people make more mistakes than others, though.
That's true.
Some people more than others.
A mistake
like our
doesn't
good
mean
friend,
you're
the
a liar,
doctor.
though. A mistake doesn't mean you're a liar.
That's what I would say. We should play by, let's have a consistent set of rules, a consistent standard. Like that was the point of, when we contrasted Garfield's reading of Francis Moore with our friend Tazarah's reading of Jobson. It was just to say that, let's have a consistent standard. If it was permissible for Tazarah to read a primary source through a secondary source through the lens of a secondary source, then it's permissible for 93 and Garfield to do so as well. And related to this,
but if I could say this though, I agree. I think we should be fair, but I also do want to say Richard Katz and
of course. What I think 93 was saying, that in this case, Kelly's handling,
in this particular case, I agree.
Kelly's handling of Francis Moore was, I don't think it's deliberate deception. I think he misunderstood the source, and all he's asking, and all I'm asking, and I think we should all ask this, is let's just be fair and stop playing this game where, if you misunderstood any source, then you're automatically a liar and discredited. And honestly, I would say let's focus on arguments and judge the arguments on their own merits. Like you brought up the Richard Katz.
Right.
I think that is a great point. Like if they want to throw around this idea of, you know, you did something deceptive and therefore you're discredited, that Katz thing would fly around. But in their defense, suppose tomorrow, I gave this analogy on Facebook recently in a discussion. Suppose tomorrow, Will Brown put out a video in which he argues that 1 + 1 = 2. His argument will not be refuted by bringing up the Katz fiasco, right? We can even with them, we can judge their arguments on their own merits, and I ask that they all play by the same rules as well. Stop with this game of so and so's a liar, therefore every wrong argument from them should be ignored and is wrong. You know, it's cheap. Let's judge the arguments on their own merits.
And on behalf of Garfield, he told me to say this from one cat to another cat. Oh, that was more like a pigeon. That was more like a pigeon. I'm sorry. That was more like a pigeon.
That was like the bird man, like. All right.
Still, it was good. I wasn't ready.
Birdman clap. All right, hold on a second. All right, so Abu, I'm gonna put the summary.
I guess we can just wrap up and
if you could read it for everyone,
sure,
please. Just give me
one
one moment. As soon as you see it, you can start reading. Yeah.
All right. And so this will basically wrap up the show, and it's going to cover what we covered in this last, I guess, 80 minutes. We've been on for about an hour and 26 minutes. So once it's up, I'll start reading it. You know, and here we go. All right, here we go. So basically, we'll sum it up in 3 points, right? Point 1. Kelly's jab at Garfield was part of honestly, a desperate attempt to draw attention away from Orthodox Moor's criticisms of Kelly's pew methodology, right? It was also, frankly, a weak attempt to depict Moore as being in some sort of sinister alliance with Garfield, with the implication being that exposing Garfield would somehow expose Orthodox Moor by proxy, right? And that's something we covered in the first 20 minutes. Point 2, Kelly's handling of the source, which he accused Garfield of twisting, wound up being a glaring example of Kelly's own struggles with reading comprehension. Not in general, but with this source. He did not properly comprehend this source. He badly misunderstood it. And point number 3, Kelly's handling of the source was so embarrassingly bad that his own supporters, and this happened on Berean's channel on the 29th, Kelly's own supporters had to downgrade and scale back the accusation to, frankly, a trifling, hair-splitting quibble over an approach that even Kelly's supporters themselves have taken to related texts. And by the way, the use of trifling there is meant in the same sense as quibble, in the sense of focusing on something that's frankly, honestly, insignificant and minor. They made a mountain out of a molehill, or at least Kelly did. Thoughts? Looks like both of you are muted. If you're
Birdman hand rub. That's what it is. Birdman hand rub. No.
There we go. I got it.
No, but seriously, at the end of the day, I think hopefully moving forward, I would hope that the good doctor, doctor in quotation marks, would hopefully avoid this sort of pettiness, because this is petty.
It was very really petty. Silly. I agree. It's and I just want to reiterate this again. It turned into a whole discussion over whether Garfield misused the source, but it was all designed to draw attention away from Orthodox Moor's criticisms of Kelly's methodology, and on the pews, and whether or not on a very minor subject, whether or not Arabic appears on the pews at the church in Savannah. And Kelly took an approach with Moore that he did with Issachar, that he did with me, and honestly, it's disgusting, where he ignores all the methodological points and he tries to tell his audience that this person who's disagreeing with him is somehow attacking the entire Israelite community. How absurd is it to say that Orthodox Moor is attacking the entire Israelite community? I mean, it's absurd, but frankly, Kelly going down that road, it's disgusting that he does this just to avoid, he creates these false controversies to sort of, to try to get away
avoid criticism from methodology.
Exactly, to draw focus away from the methodological questions. He did it with me, he did it with Issachar, and now he tried to do it with Orthodox Moor, and it's cheap every single time. He avoids discussing methodology, and he tries to get personal, and he gaslights people, and he creates these ridiculous guilt by association accusations, and and just silly stuff where his disagreement with one man results in him flailing his arms against everyone. If I could just mention one quick thing about Issachar, Issachar refers to God as in zombie, right? Which is a word used in the Congo. It's used by some in West Africa to refer to God, but it's used by millions of people. And so Kelly is angry that Issachar wanted to discuss the pews, so he wound up attacking basically everyone that uses the word in zombie. Millions of people. He basically slandered and libeled them, said that they're all engaging in necrolatry and all this kind of stuff. And now he did something similar with Moor. One person, one man who identifies as a Moor, criticized Kelly on methodology for interpreting the pews, and Kelly is all of a sudden talking about you can't trust the Moors in general. The Moors, plural, are all sellouts, the biggest sellouts. It's disgusting that he does this. His disagreement with one man, results in him flailing his arms at entire groups, and it's ridiculous.
He seems not to know, because based on what he was saying, he was trying to throw the Moors in there as like they're the enemies because they were selling black people. I don't think he knows that the Luso Africans or Lanzados also sold slaves, or that the kingdom of Weda, they call it, they say Juda too. They're definitely slave traders. I don't know if he's aware, because he said, but they're trying to say that these people were selling slaves. And there's a part of the video, I wish you would have got it, because I don't want to misquote him. It was like he was saying, no, it wasn't them. It was the Moors that were the ones that was doing that, because it's known that the Moors definitely did, do some backstabbing, but the Luso Africans, they definitely did too. I have an example too. I don't have to show it, but I have an example I can explicitly show too.
Food for thought. But with that being said, I want to thank you, gentlemen, for coming on through. I really appreciate this, and hopefully moving forward, the quote unquote good doctor,
our beloved friend, the good doctor,
can avoid the bad medicine.
Yep. Maybe
enough of the bad medicine.
Enough of the misdirection. Enough of the gaslighting. It's been basically, my goodness, we're pretty soon it'll be 3 years worth. It's like 2.5 years worth of avoiding.
Just remember, his lawyer won't go after you because you're a nobody.
Right, that's a relief. I want to say that's one thing, small victory. He's been threatening legal action against us for more than 2 years, and I'm glad to hear that his secret
you avoided that $1 million lawsuit, man. Yeah.
$1 million. Where
were you going to come up with all that good money, man, for the good doctor? Anyways, with that being said,
I'm poor. I'm broke, so they wouldn't have got much out of me. But I'm glad they didn't pursue it. I'm glad the secret lawyer told them not to pursue it.
Yeah. Maybe he can tell the secret scholar to come out and tell us, share his credentials and everything. But anyways, with that being said, I'm going to end it here. I want to thank 93. I want to thank Abu for coming on through.
Being color coordinated.
Yep.
That's right.
Palestinian flags on deck.
All right. With that being said, God bless you all. I hope this has edified someone out there. And until next time, take care. God bless.
God bless.
Bye.